All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Digitech Zeal. This is live Python training session. So last time we started looking at Python control structure, and I took my time to explain the importance of understanding this aspect of programming. As a matter of fact, I did said that there is no application whether whether it was built with Python or any other programming language that can successfully communicate without defining the control structure. And in summary, said that the control structure is an aspect of programming that determine the order at which commands are executed. All right. Most apps work with this flow. That is why most time you cannot build an app without, determining the order of your code execution. And then I told us in that session that Python control structure can actually be split into two arms. The first arm is the conditional statements, while the second arm is the loops. Right? And I remember that in that session, though I'm not using the same system, I would have been able to show us some of those things we did there. But I remember you can confirm from your notes, we touched almost much on the conditional statement. We started from looking at if, which a control structure under conditional statement that only execute a true statements. And then we now migrate, we now advance from the if to, I think, if s, which is an aspect of control structure that gives room for an alternative output. All right. So supposing you write a code that if someone's age is greater than 18, the applications you output, you are eligible to vote. That is the true value. If the person age is now up to 18, it will output you are eligible to vote. What about if the person is below 18? That means the application will do nothing. That is the order of control we are talking about, where we program certain conditions or criteria for the application to know when to react and when not to react. That is what the entire concept around control structure is wrapped in. All right. So what I'm going to do, just to refresh our memory, we are going to take some projects on that, the first aspect of the control structure, which is the conditional statement. We're going to look at some random exercise. Actually, I will have given us these exercises as an assignment or a project to work on, but I just feel that we should look at them together in the class just to solidify our knowledge on that first aspect before we move into the second aspect. So we are going to look at, because I know in that very class, we actually dealt with the main control structure. There was not too much exercise. I'm talking about how, I think it was toward the end, we did something like that, can check results are great. That was the only tangible exercise that was carried out in that particular session. So I still have a few exercises here that will further help us to understand this very first aspect. So the first one I want to take tonight is we are building an application. Let's say we are asked to create an app to check number. So you can also check your notes whether this is part of what we have covered so that I can shift to the next one. to check even or odd numbers. So let's say we want to create an app that check, once we give it a number, it will check whether it's an even number or odd number. We all know what even numbers are. Even numbers are numbers that when you when you divide them with two, or when you divide them, there is no word remainder. While odd number is the word the other way around. So let's say we want to check whether a number is an even number or not. So let's create this simple app, and we are using this to explain more on the Python conditional statement that we learned in our last section. All right. So the first thing we are going to do, I would like you to make it dynamic. When I say dynamic, it means that we don't know at this point the number the user are going to supply. That will be checked whether it's an even number or odd number. So we are giving the user room to send in this number to us. And then our app will check based on any number they enter. So for that reason, we are going to create a variable called number. Let's create a variable called number. And then we are going to collect, because we are going to use an input function here. And you and I know that by default, the input function collects all value as string. All right. And we are talking about collecting either integer number or float number. So in this sense, it means that there is need for us to convert whatever number the user will supply. So for that reason, we are going to use the integer constructor to accommodate the input function. So which means that once you collect any number, if the number is not an integer, then the integer will convert it before what? Doing whatever you want to do with it. So inside the input, you specify what you want the user to give to you. So I can just say what? Enter a number, because that is what we want to check. Enter a number. All right. So now after this, so we have that as a means of collecting the number that will be checked with the app that we want to develop with the if and else, right? So I can say if, so this is where you are actually starting your function from. That one is just like, okay, how do I want to get the information from the user that this particular app is going to check? So I'm going to say if number, which is the variable that you just declare. If number, we are going to use the remainder. Remember, if you remember when we were talking about operator, I want somebody to unmute and tell us what I taught us to be this sign under operator, so that you know why I'm using it. That somebody unmute and tell me what is the meaning of that percentage sign in terms of programming. So if this is equals to 0, so this is like the condition you are setting. I'm waiting for someone that will tell us the meaning of that, the meaning of this percentage sign in terms of Python operator. You know, we discussed all this from the beginning class. Okay, so if this print, once you know what to say, you can unmute and talk back to me. This, I'll say, okay, print even number, print even number, s, s. Remember, we have discussed all this in the last class. I'm only trying to use them to create more app for us to understand them better. S, print, want to try, Mr. Clement? S, print odd number.
Yes, I think it's within the modulus, like percentage has to do with remainder.
Good, exactly. So that is why we are using. So if a number is divided by 2, right? So if there is a remainder, then it's going to be odd. If there's no remainder, then it's going to be interpreted as even number. So now let's run it and see this is the first one. So if I run this code, see what we have. So I'm asked to enter a number. Let me enter 90. I press enter. So it outputted what? Even number. Because if you divide 90 by 2, definitely you are not going to have a remainder. You're going to have uh, 45. So let's assume that I take 3. I take 3, then so that it return what? Odd number. All right. So let's take another. If you don't have question, let's take another one that will involve uh, the if. I think that one we did that one. Check your notes. I think we did the one that checked the grade of student score, right? We did that one. We did that one. Let me just confirm and get back to me. I'm very sure that we did something of that nature. So the next task,
Uh, Excuse, this is it odd or odd? I
okay,
think odd should be
okay.
O double D.
Yeah, it's true. I think you are correct. Yes, sorry. Thank you very much. Just a second. Let me correct it here also. Thank you for that observation. Okay, so now let's look at the next task. Uh, let's look at the next task. The next task should be so want to create uh an ATM withdrawal, an ATM withdrawal. Okay, an ATM withdrawal. Now, what we are trying to create here is that let's assume that sometime when we get to the ATM machine, we slot in our cards, and then some of us we want to withdraw 5,000, but we have 4,000. What we normally get as a return, we will get something like insufficient fund, right? Because you are trying to withdraw more than what you have in your account. So that is the kind of app we want to withdraw now. We want to create now that we can, just like an ATM machine, want to build an app that somebody can withdraw. And if he tend or she tend to withdraw more than what he or she has in our account, the machine will return insufficient. All right. Then if the person withdraws is within what he or she has have in his account, then it will output transaction successful. All this is to give you a picture of what some of these apps are doing out there, right? So let's say the first thing we are going to do, we are also going to create, we are going to set a variable to a balance. So I'm going to start by saying that, okay, the balance, the first place, balance is equals to balance is equals to 5,000. Example. Said that now we can now create amount as another variable, and then the same thing we are going to collect because we don't know the amount yet, what the person would like to withdraw. Let's assume that we are collecting whatever the person supplies should be converted to integer. That is why I'm also wrapping the inputs inside what? The integer. All right. So I will now instruct my user to enter withdraw, enter, withdraw amount. Right? So let's say that it's settled. Now, the next thing the idea is that the first app that I created, we are targeting how to combine the if and the s. Now, this one I'm targeting the if, uh, how many of them are we looking at here? We are looking at the if, we are looking at the elif, then we are looking at the s. Remember, all these were treated in the last class. I'm only trying to use them to do more projects so that we can understand them from another perspective, and also to give us an avenue to see how we can use them to build a real life application. Okay, so now let's write our conditional statement. Amount, if amount. So that is what is going to determine whether the person withdrawal will be successful or not. If amount is, we are using this operator, if it's greater than balance, which is part of what the variable you created. Remember, we have set our balance to 5,000. All right. Even in the bank, you must have a balance before you think of what withdrawing. All right. So an app like this is what has been programmed in that ATM machine. That is what we are trying to contextualize here now. Now, if amount is what greater than balance, then Python should print is sufficient. Should print is sufficient fund. Is sufficient fund. Then we have another true statement. Remember, I told us that elif is where you have multiple true value. All right, not just one, which is usually assigned to the if. So elif comes in because we want to test another true value that is between the first true value. So we say elif because we are checking another amount again. Elif amount. Elif amount. Here we are checking with less than or equals to 0. Right? So set a condition. All right. Now print what invalid. Print invalid amounts. All right. Then S can now come in. S. You have other true value, you can accommodate them before you finally use the S. Right? So S balance S balance is negative equals to. Remember that when we were at the very beginning part of this training, there was a place where we were talking about operator, where we have plus or minus. Plus before the equal sign, minus before the equal sign. You can still remember, can unmute and tell us. So that is what we are applying here. I want somebody to unmute and tell us that interpretation. What do we mean by what? Minus equals to before the amount. Can anybody explain that expression? Do we have any idea? Okay, let me keep writing words so you can say something. Okay.
You use it and said like minus equals to same as maybe x equals to x minus 5. So it's going to be that when you are doing the mathematics, it should be x is the same as x. Then not. Uh,
Okay, let me explain what is happening here. You know, you have balance, and balance has been set to what? 5,000, right? Am I communicating? Balance has been set to what? 5,000. Now, when you say 5,000 minus, that is whatever amount that is in whatever amount you have in as balance, right? The amount the person is withdrawing will be taken from it. That is what we are communicating here in programming. Because this is one that is going to output what? This is the one that is going to output successfully. And before you can successfully withdraw, it means that whatever amount you impute, if it's taken from the balance, you still have some what? Remainder. But if the amount you input here is either equals to, you can see that we are using the other equals to the balance, because that means you can withdraw the account to zero. If that is what you can take the whole of 5,000. Or if the amount is more than 5,000, that amount should be deducted from the balance. That is the meaning of that word, balance manual, because you cannot put balance plus, because a balance plus is going to be used where you are crediting the account, but when you are debiting the account, it's going to be what? Negative. I hope that is understood before I proceed.
Yes.
Okay. So now we can say print. We can say print. If this happens, print transaction. Success. Print transaction success. Then we'll just put a comma here and call what? The balance. That is, it will print it and then also what? Tell us what is remaining there. That's the reason why after this message, remember that this will have been what? Taken from here and the balance should be returned. Because each time you withdraw, everybody wants to see how much is remaining. That is the communication here. All right, so let's see how this works out. So I run the app. Let me comment the first app out so that you can actually focus on this. I think it started from. Okay. Let me stop it and reload it. Okay, so I'm asked to enter what? The amount. So let's say I'm withdrawing, since we set the amount, the balance to 5,000, let's say I'm taking 3,000. So you can see that what? It returned transaction successfully and return what? The balance as what? 2,000, which is very correct. So let me give us a few minutes to try this very one. I think just try this one, or let me allow you to, I think both of them are here, so you can just try two of them in the next, let's say 5 minutes, that we can look at the loops. Once we come back from that short break, while you try these two options, look at the loops. Once you are done trying, please let me know so that I can continue. Okay, so
Yeah,
okay,
my Wi-Fi went off.
okay. Well, have you okay? Um, now let's.
I sent it to you on WhatsApp.
Okay, good. All right, all right. So let's look at the second part of the control structure. Let's look at probably its introduction. We'll still have some projects.
Then, sir, if I want to remove it from comments, like I did other ones, what will I do? Is it the same control slash? The one I highlight.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so let's quickly look at introduction to loops. Let's look at introduction to loop. So this is actually the last aspect of the control structure, and because we have taken so much time on, though it's good that we try some of these things in the class. It makes the learning more interesting. Let's look at loop as the second arm of Python control structure, which I said is a little bit more advanced than the conditional statements. Right, so let's define it. Let's look at the definition of loop. So a loop repeats a block of code until a condition changes or sequence let me see if I can break it down here, or sequence is exhausted until sequence is exhausted. Sequence is exhausted. So that is loop. Now, the word loop, it means that an action will be repeated. The only thing that stops that action is when a certain condition is no longer met. So depending on, so it means that anytime you are creating loops, you either specify at what point it to be terminated using your condition specification, or you program it to continue. And that is a kind of dangerous, because the application will continue loading, to not allow other things to what to be executed. And that is why each time we work with loops, we always create a terminating condition, right? At which point it should stop reoccurring. So in programming, we also use this depending on the particular feature you are programming in your app, that will actually determine whether you either go with the conditional statements or you go with loops. But we are learning all of them as part of Python control structure. All right, so for loop, so we have different loops. We have different loops, but we have the ones that are mostly used. Most of them, you can just learn them for learning sake. But when it comes to most of the application development, we use some of them more, particularly the for loop. All right. So that is why, let me add this note, because I'm going to focus on that for loop tonight. So let's look at that. So the for loop is a type of loop. The for loop is used, let's say, is used when the number of repetition is known. I want you to take notes of this keyword. When the number of repetition is known. So we are going to see it played out. For example, I can say, okay, loop, I can set my initial states, because that word loop also means iteration. So material will use the word iteration. Remember, when we categorize this Python control structure, in fact, I use the word iteration to represent what? The loop. right? So now it means that when we say iteration, it means you have segment of entity that something is hovering over. So which means that you are talking about starting from somewhere and then cutting across some other thing and then stating where it's going to end. But in this case, like I just explained, the ending part will be determined by the condition we are going to specify. So between the starting point and the ending point, so whenever you are creating loop, irrespective of the language you are using, you must always specify the initial state. That initial state is usually represented with letter I. So when we say, okay, I is, maybe you set I to 0, and then you now say what I iterate to what 4. So which means that if I is 0, remember that 0 means the first element. Remember when we were discussing the indexing concept. So but if you say I equal to 0, you are talking about what? It should start iteration from the very first element, which is always represented with what? 0. And then you can now specify the ending point. So that ending point will now be defined based on the condition. So I'm just trying to give us the picture how it works. Now let's look at the center. The center will explain better. Let's look at the center.
Sorry, sir. This thing you wrote, is it day? Is it for as FOUR or normal for?
Yes, that is it not this one? The one I'm highlighting, right?
Is it?
Yes, for loop.
Yes,
For
day
loop
for.
is a type, yes, it's like that. For loop. That is how it is.
Okay.
It's always the first type of loop is for loop, the for loop, the for loop. So that is the spelling FOR. Okay, so let's look at the syntax. So the syntax is you having the for, the variable follows. I just want us to get the syntax. Remember, I always emphasize we should start by understanding the sequence. The syntax is very important. So that when you understand the syntax, you can just be plugging things in and then be able to get it easier. So the sequence, the sequence, the sequence, then followed by the statements, followed by the statements. So, okay, I'll still comment it out just to explain. So you see it now. So the for loop, the function is called, then the variable is sequence, and then the statement that we follow. So let me also comment this out. All right, so let's look at a simple example here. A simple example here. And what is the simple example? Here we are going to use for loop with range. So range is a function on its own, but it cannot work by itself. It's a function that cannot work by itself. So it's usually used alongside with the for loop to define the range, as in from the starting point to the end. That is what minimum and maximum. So it's actually used to set boundary between the starting and the end. So that is what we use it to achieve when you are using what? The for loop concept. For example, now I'm looking at a situation whereby we want to print out a 5 number starting from 0 to 4. And I don't want to print 0, print 1, print 2, print 3, print 4. I don't want to use up to about 5 to 6 what different print command. So I can use because since I understand that the for loop can hover, can iterate, all I need to do is to specify the beginning and the end. Then all the number in between will be what? Automatically what? Called. All right. So that is one of the benefits of using this. So it reduces the volume of code you will have written. So now I can just say for, remember the syntax, for, then the variable in sequence. So in other words, you are indirectly creating multiple variables, but because you are iterating, so it's going to be creating the variable by itself and then assigning the value into them. So let's look at the communication of what we are talking about here. So from the syntax above, I start by calling the for. I start by calling the for, right? It's a function, right? Now you can see it there. Once you call the for, from the syntax, we define the variable. So for I, remember I said the I is usually used to define the initial state, which is the beginning. You can't talk about range. Remember in mathematics, we were taught that range means for you, there's no formula for calculating range, even in statistics. The formula how we got range was that we know the minimum and the maximum, then we subtract them. That gives us range. That is why I said you cannot use the range alone because it's not going to make sense. But we only use it in loop, particularly in for loop, to define our the number boundaries. All right, so I'll say for I, so we are using the in keyword. Remember, I believe in this class, I must have used that word in. In. So in is a keyword. Then we are bringing the range as the word, the function. So just to define the word, the distance. Remember I say what? Variable is sequence. So that's what I want to use. So if I put 5 here, it means that what is going to iterate from, remember the number you put there, number 5. Number 5 that you have in there is the ending point. So which means that you want to print all the number before 5, but you cannot print that number 5. I don't know if anybody understand what I just explained. That is what we are saying here. All the number before 5. Are you and I know? If you are printing number before 5, it means 0 will be printed, 1 will be printed. It's going to print 5 of them, 5 different number, but those number must be less than 5. All right. So it means that if we come down as a print I, if we print I, which is the what? The variable now. That is why I gave us that syntax so that we know that that I actually represents what? The variable is sequence. That is variable 1, variable 2, variable 3. All right. So if I print it now, you see that what? Let me comment this application so that we can focus on that one. So let me stop it and run it again. So if I print now, you see that what? It printed from 0 to 1. So what has this helped us to do as programmer? What this has done is that this has simply saved us from creating 4 to 5 different variable and assigning value. So there's no point of you saying variable 1 store what? This, variable 2 store this. So we have automatically achieved that. So what happened is that it iterates. What is the boundary? The boundary is what we have set from 0 to what? To 5. And then if I put 6 in that particular code, it's going to print what? Number 5. If I put 7, it's going to print number 6. So that is how it goes. I hope that is understood. Let me find out from you before we look at it from another perspective. The very short code, you can see it has really saved us from writing a bunch of codes. I hope that is clear. Ferdinand and Mr. Clement, I hope it's clear.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. So let's look at another exercise. And this exercise, we are asked to print all even number from 2 to 20. So let's see how we can capture that in programming. Let me put it as a task. The task here, print all even numbers from 2 to 20. All even numbers from 2 to 20. So using the for loop, using the for loop, using the for loop, using the for loop. So what we are going to do here, we'll call, remember the syntax, for, and then variable is sequence. For, then I'm going to say number this time around. So this is your variable. Then variable number in, then I'll also bring in the range to define the set of number. Then, now sometimes the range, you can determine where it should start from and then where it should end. So we just put like 2 and then put comma 21 and then comma 2. So you are going to see what is going to happen. Then if I print number, if I print the number, I have their numbers. Okay, if I print number, let me take this out temporarily. If I print number, you see that what it printed only even number, only even number. You say from 2, 4 is even number, 6 is even number. Then now I want somebody to tell me why we put 21 here from the last logic here. When you put 5 here, you got 4. Why did you put 21 here?
Because if you put 20, it will stop at 18.
God bless you. God bless you. Show that you are actually getting it. Now, this one is the starting point. This one is to tell you that what? Now, what about these 2 that you put here? What does that mean? The interval. If you check what happened here, 2, 2 to 4 to 6 to 8, 2, 2 interval, 2, 2 interval. If you don't put anything here, it will take it 1, 1 interval. Take it 1, 1 interval. All right. So these are some of the things that we can actually understand. So you can see how we are using the loop. Now, lastly, I'm going to, so that I will leave us to go and research more on loop. Because the next class, I'm going to start the project base, which is the last aspect of this training. Like I told us, I'm going to be bringing real life projects that will be a little bit complex, where we can apply all that we have learned to create real life project. But the only thing is that those apps will be running within our terminal. All right. So except for those of us that I think in that next class, I should be able to announce the advance so that those that want to key in can key in, so that we can learn to how to create a user interface application where our output will no longer be within the terminal. So then we'll create a database that will be holding this and then probably displaying all our input to the users via Python GUI. All right. So let's look at one more example. Using this time around, we want to loop across our Python list. Remember when we were talking about Python advanced data structure, we started with list tuple. Now, the idea is that let's assume that we have some item or element in a list, and we want to use loop to call out all of them. All right, so you know that you can actually loop across list properties or elements. So let's look at that one, and that is going to serve the last topic for tonight. So you go and research more on loop, do more practice. All right, because the next time you see me using it will be in those projects. Now, let's look at tags. So the task is a loop through Python lists elements. So let's quickly create the list. So let's say I have a list of fruits. I have a list of fruits, and then we can still remember list structure. and the bracket that's involved. So let's just create, let's say, apple, orange, let me just make it 3, mango. Right. So now, now let's see how we can use the for loop to print out all the elements in. So I'm going to say, as usual, for the variable in sequence, I'll say fruits. Fruits. For variable in sequence, I'll say fruits. In fruits. Now, there's something that I want us to understand here, which is a bit different from the concept we use. Here we cannot use range. You cannot use range because we have all the elements of list already defined. Okay, so now what we are going to do here, you can see the spelling of my fruit has S. All right, and then for this one that I'm creating does not have S. When I finish writing, I will explain it to us. So when I say what fruit in fruits, this is where I'm calling the one I created, fruit in fruits. Now let me just complete it so that you focus on the explanation. Then print what fruits. Now I want you to pay attention here. Now this is just like you have content that have already been stored somewhere. In the case of range, we only define those information that has not been stored anywhere. That is why we did not use this concept. We simply call number. All right. But in this case, we have this value already held somewhere. So what we are saying is that this fruit is like a temporary storage variable that you are creating that will take a value from fruit and store it in it and then output it, because each of them must be outputted. So remember that we are still iterating. So it will iterate and capture apple and store it temporarily while the program is still running inside what fruit, so that it can pour it out from the container. So once it has outputted apple, it will go back again and iterate and capture what orange and store it in the same fruit. So this is your processing storage, not the main storage holding those elements. So each time an item is iterated or captured from the list, it will store it in your own variable. And then why you are saying this is that what this item that is temporarily holding here is in what fruits. That is where it's calling it from. Then when you are printing, what you want to print is the individual element that has been iterated and captured from here and duplicated in the same variable. So which means that by the time the iteration is completed, this will have been created what 3 times, and each of them within the program memory will be holding apple. The first one will hold apple, the second one will hold orange, the third one will hold mango, and then you are now saying that what print out all the values that has been stored in that variable. So that's why when I run it, you see that what it pours out what the apple and the orange, because they were all calling from here and they were all saving here temporarily. So if you print this one instead of printing that temporary variable, it means that you are calling out what this same information on the same line. We can try it now so that you see what we are talking about. So if I mistakenly put S here and I print now, you see what happened. It will call them on the same line. But that is not what we want. What we want is that the individual value that has been iterated from the list that are temporarily storing in that your variable is what we want to output one after the other, because each time it runs through the code, it will capture one and put it here. When it goes again, it capture another one and put it here. So it's just like it has captured apple, it has created a variable fruit and store it. Goes back again, capture orange, create a variable and store it. Go back again, capture what? Mango, create a variable and store it. Then you are now saying print all the fruit in as much as the same name. So print the individual value in them. I hope that is clear. Do you understand what I just explained? Please, I need a response.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is where we are going to stop. The next class we are going to take a project. So I will just be taking some random 2 to 3 projects, and then we assume that the basic and the intermediate aspect of Python is settled. So with everything that you have learned for this period, I can assure you, if you want to go into data analytics, you are 100% overqualified to cope with data science using Python and data analytics using Python. If you want to go into cybersecurity, you have learned far more than the basic knowledge you need for ethical hacking in cybersecurity. So any program that had to do with Python, with what we have learned, we have even gone beyond the basic knowledge that is required before going into IT training that involve or that requires basic Python. So remember that I don't know whether you guys are in the group. Tomorrow, I'm going to be holding a free taster section. So it is going to be a data analytics master class, just like this one. But the tomorrow one is free. That's why it is called taster section, because we know that some persons want to check whether is something that worth investing their money in. And I also want to be careful so that I don't just put people that do not even know what the program is, and they end up paying at the end of the day after 2 classes, they find out that this is not where I belong to. So it's an avenue for them to understand everything about what data analytics is all about. So if they are making that decision of going into it, then it will be understood. Not we advertise, somebody will just pay, and then when they start learning, we discover that they begin to feel that it's like this is not where I belong. And a lot of people are making that mistake. From the students I've graduated so far, in fact, there are times that because it's something that actually prompted giving them a chance to understand the terrain of the program before subscribing into it. Because from experience, I discovered that there are a lot of students that drop out from different programs because they wrongly choose those programs. That is not where their zeal is. All right. So, though we already have, if you are in that group, we already have about over 130 persons that have already shown interest, but our Zoom can only take 100%. So tomorrow, if you know you want to join that section to know what data analytics is all about, kindly join on time. Kindly join on time. So what I would advise you is, I know I'm not going to inform them, but the class will be open. Let's say, though it's going to run from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So, but the line will be open, let's say 5:50. So you can quickly log in, or whoever you are recommending that you know that need this training. You want people that really want it, because we are going to give a huge discount to the first set of persons. First set of persons, we are going to give. If I see the turnout, I see that a lot of people have shown interest, then it will just be like paying a token. I will just use a crowdfunding instead of having just 2 persons. All right, so we draw the curtain here. See you next week, Sunday, to take on the first project. So we'll look at common Python projects and we'll look at it together. There's no question. Do we have question? Do we have question, please?
No, sir, I don't have.
All right. So the absence of a question, say good night to us. Have a blessed week ahead.